So we have 1 more minute, just in case. Hello. Okay, so I added status checks and bug triage to the agenda. So essentially, mainly I want to see if we have one blockers for especially Galley, since I think the 1.1 launch is going to be primarily, like one of the primary features that we're going to have in there is going to be Galley. So on the status side, he entered the existing information, the things that I was able to collect. So on the Galley side, Iris actually landed the file system work. So Galley now has file system-based input. In addition to the API server, we can get configuration from the file system. I also added the test grid entries for the MCP versions of the tests. I actually put the link for that. So there's the documents here. So we can actually track any failures on the MCP side, like on the MCP counterparts of the tests that are currently running. So far things looks pretty good, clean and green. So there doesn't seem to be any MCP specific failures as far as I can tell. Have you run into any recent issues?
I'm seeing a few. I don't know if it's lingering from before. Some people having PRs that haven't picked up the latest fix yet, or if there's another bug in place. So I have to look into that.
Okay.
The frequency is much less.
Yeah.
Which suggests it might be just the people haven't rebased against master, or it's failing because of a legitimate issue.
Okay. Is it? Let me actually present instrumenting. So is there any outstanding known issues at this point?
Not yet. No, I have to dig into that as I work on the scale testing.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so do we have all the full gamut of E2E tests available at this point? Is it like are we running some of them in we can run some of them in the pre-summit, right? Are we running them in post-summit?
Yes.
Okay. So on the scale test, did you actually have any numbers yet, or is it?
No, I don't suspect it's going to be numbers. It's going to be feature parity with what we've done in the non-MCP case. So I'm not looking at all the scale node testing. It looks at scale of pilot, but also load of the data path. So we're primarily interested in the control path. See how many.
Yeah, but I suspect
we can go through and do things break. So it's, even though it's scale, I think it's functional coverage at scale.
Yes.
Rather than how far can we turn the dial before we can't keep up.
Yeah, I think MCP should be mostly no change from perfect characteristics perspective, but I think it will be great to actually prove that.
Yeah, I don't have anything concrete to show, but yeah.
Okay, so on the API governance side, I created an API governance doc some time ago, and I shared it with various like the TOC members. I should actually add the. I'm gonna add it after the meeting. I'm gonna add the document for this link for this document. So this is about establishing a process for API management. So the last week's TOC meeting, we actually reviewed that, and I'm gonna incorporate the review feedback and then start implementing the process in the next 2 weeks. So on the client library side, so we have an open source contributor who's actually looking at implementing the client libraries, but he's currently blocked. Essentially, his work is on hold because he has other things to do, other work to do. Okay, so Istio-Cuddle. So the CRUD operations. This is the apply and like kubectl overlap.
Yeah. So this is in progress. We've already deprecated the Istio-Cuddle CRUD operations. That was everybody. The TOC signed off on that. I still need to introduce a validate command to replace the one. So when you deprecate the CRUD operations, the one thing you lose is the ability to do client-side validation. So it'd be useful to have that. I'll have the hook for that in Istio-Cuddle. So I'm adding that command. Once that's in place, then we can send out the deprecation notice that you should stop using Istio-Cuddle and start using kubectl for CRUD operations. And if you need validation, you can point them at the new command that's there. And then announce how that deprecation will play out. So my intent is for 1.1, it will be in deprecated state, but it will still work, and then we'll remove it in 1.2. So people will have 3 or 4 months to update tooling. It shouldn't be way too burdensome on anybody.
Yeah. So okay, so after this change, what else is in the Istio-Cuddle path? Is it, are we going to create the better directory structure for managing Istio-Cuddle ownership areas? Ideally, we should own the tool, not the functionality.
Yes, there's no issue for that yet. It's not top priority for 1.1.
Sure.
But I can create the issue for it.
Okay, so I'm going to say JSON to create issue.
There's a bigger issue here of what do we want Istio-Cuddle to look like in the future. Deprecating the CRUD operations was the beginning of that. There's still a lot of other useful features in there. So how we structure that, how it might integrate with kubectl plugin system, how much of the kubectl or Kubernetes client libraries we integrate with to have a more Kubernetes native feel in terms of flag usage or loading configuration or syntax. That's all. I can add all that in the issue.
Okay. Okay, so on the 1.1 blocker, so yes, 7.8, 7.7 is the one that I was planning to look at, but I didn't get a chance to look at that one. So 7.9.4.7, always push initial MCP response for new streams. Is this
possibly a blocker? In theory, pilot will not pass readiness check until it's received configuration. So if you spin a pilot and there's no configuration in the system at all, it will not. The pod won't be ready yet.
I see.
In practice, when with authentication, you've got an authentication policy. So as soon as you have that in the default install, you avoid that problem because we will push the authentication policy. But for correctness in a minimal Istio install with no authentication policy or no Istio policy at all, we have to figure out some way to deal with it, because Pilot is still expecting, it's still depending on Kubernetes watch style notification. So you do a watch and you get an indication that the watch is synced, even if you don't get anything, and now you can stream resources. So one option is to do the same for MCP. We push an empty response. I don't know what the empty response looks like, how we track it across sessions, but that would be for robustness.
Okay.
So things don't get stuck.
Okay.
And then the final one is, this is also for correctness. If we push config the Pilot doesn't like for some reason, we don't rate limit repushes right now. So again, in a correct system, this is not a problem, but if something's out of sync, it doesn't fail the way it should. You end up nothing crashes, but just your logs are flooded with a bunch of pushes that are not doing anything.
Okay.
So we kind of know what we need to do there. We just need to rate limit the pushes. That's what Pilot does to Envoy as well.
Is it a concern at the MCP server level, or is it at the Galley snapshot generation level?
It's at the MCP server level. Okay. If you push something, it gets nacked, then the client requests it. In the process of knacking, it says, okay, I want more config, and the server says, well, I have config I can give you. I just gave it to you before and you knacked it, but I'll give it to you again. And so by rate limiting it, that'll prevent a flood storm. And then we can also do more intelligent things later, like keep track if we knack something not to repush until that config state is changed. That whole path will also look a bit different once we have incremental MCP, because we might be able to repush the config that wasn't bad. So there's a lot of work we can do there, but I think for initially it's just rate limiting pushes.
Okay. Okay. So
and then any bugs as far as blockers that come up.
Sure. But so far, before the meeting, I tried going through the issues of it and didn't see anything that kind of pops up. Okay. All right. I guess that's it. If you guys have any things to discuss about, feel free to,
I had a quick question with regards to end-to-end MCP scale test that Jason you have in flight right now. Can I get some context on that? Reason I'm asking is just because I'm working on something very similar for Cloud Foundry, and just want to see how much of it is overlapping with what you have in flight.
So what we're doing is taking the existing end-to-end tests, which are integrated with Kubernetes, and just flip the MCP bit. At that point, the scale clusters that we have there's not a huge number of pilots or mixtures. I think the key there is really stress testing Pilot with a larger number of proxies. So we want to see that we can get feature parity between, the Galley can support a handful of pilots and a handful of mixtures. And that as config churns, there's nothing gets stuck, and the CPU usage of Galley doesn't increase. But that's all integrated with the Kubernetes. It's not focused just on the MCP layer.
Got it. Is this something that we are planning to run per PR, so to speak, publish the results, or?
No, it's not a micro benchmark. I don't even think it's a post submit at this point. I think it's somebody running it periodically or in the background on a dedicated test cluster. I think the long-term plan is that it is automated. That would be either post submit or periodic, but that it should be driven. The infrastructure to set that up should be driven by the performance and scalability work group. They're making progress on that. I don't know the current state, but the plan is to just hook into that already, and then once MCP is the default, there's no dedicated MCP test. It's just the tests that they're already running have that bit flipped. For 1.1, we're having to spin things up in parallel because we still want the legacy path to work. And then I'm just duplicating all of the test infrastructure and making sure that it comes up with MCP, it works the same way. So from an enterprise outside perspective, nothing is different. And then so you have confidence in that, then we flip that same bit and the maintained infrastructure that this other team is working on and maintaining.
And just to be pedantic, until we ship 1.1, it's not going to be legacy.
Soon to be, yes. Well,
Cool.
the non-MCP version.
Okay.
Aspirationally legacy.
Aspirational legacy, yes. That's a good term.
So for the testing that you're doing, is this with your MCP server integration to the Cloud Foundry Copilot?
Yeah, this is essentially so your Copilot is fully integrated with MCP. It sends the service entries and virtual services, destination rules, and gateways over the MCP. So what we are doing is we are sort of testing before and after MCP. We are testing this against big deployments of Cloud Foundry, which it basically consists of 200 containers, like we call them Diego cells. So there are about 20 Diego cells. On each cell, we are running about, I think, 10 containers. Yeah. So just full-blown scale Cloud Foundry, just trying to take down CAPI component, which is basically the route provider to Copilot. So we are taking it down, making sure the syncing operation actually comes back up. There are a lot of Cloud Foundry specific scenarios in there, but mainly we also monitoring Copilot and Pilot, VM, CPU, and memory usage as well. During these spikes, we are trying to observe that as well.
Okay.
Okay, so are you guys seeing any interesting differences from the perspective of MCP only? Does it change any characteristics?
This is still in flight. It's too early to make that judgment call. At this point, we literally picked up the story a few days ago, so we are in progress of setting up the environment and just making decisions on the metrics and stuff. But it's definitely one of those things on top of our list to observe the CPU and monitor.
Okay.
So in terms of metrics, Daniel Tang recently added MCP server metrics, and there's some hooks. So you should, if you wanted to be able to plug in your own metrics, but we're using Open Census now for metrics collection. But if you needed to, it's defined as an interface, so you could plumb your own metrics into that. You can see connection attempts and ACK failure rates, and I think the client support for that is also landing pretty soon. So you have client and server support. And then if you need to add anything more, it'd be great to get that incorporated into that package.
For sure. Yeah, server metrics would be kind of interesting for us because one of the goals we have here is to measure the convergence from the time the config is created inside Copilot all the way to when it's propagated in Envoy. So that's one of the goals we have here. So yeah, those hooks for the server side would be very interesting because we do need some metrics in Copilot for the most part. Okay.
So the beginning is there. I think we can certainly add more. We just need to be careful about cardinality of labels on. If we were doing per version metrics, I think that's probably can't go down that path, but we can look at aggregate metrics.
Totally.
All right. Anything else? All right, folks. See you at next meeting then.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone.
All right. Thank you. Bye.